first one was Swing Shift. So we did that, and we met there. We fell in love, and then we got together, and we had a baby. And when I did this picture, Wyatt was learning to walk, so he was 10 months.
Goldie Hawn was the light in the room for more than 50 years. The giggle, the glitter, the woman who convinced audiences that joy was more than a performance. It was her truth. From Laugh In to Overboard, from her Oscar-winning performance in Cactus Flower to her real-life romance with Kurt Russell, Goldie did more than just act in America's favorite films. She became America's favorite emotion. But what about behind the sunshine? There were shadows. She was the girl who made it look easy, blonde, bubbly, and always charming. For many years, that image served as her armor, a Hollywood darling who never aged, raged, or complained. Even when she was ignored, underestimated, or outright mocked, Goldie Hawn remained silent, always smiling, always professional, always above the fray, until now. In a stunning moment for the entertainment industry, Goldie agreed to a rare, candid interview with no script and no safety net. She was not promoting a film. She wasn't selling her memoir. She just spoke. And what she said had fans reeling. "I've worked with some of the most talented men in the world," she told me, "but some of them were monsters." Her voice did not tremble. Her eyes did not water. But something in her tone, steady, slow, cutting, made it clear that this wasn't just a confession. This was a release. What followed was not gossip. It was neither pity nor cruel. It was a calm, deliberate narrative. 5 names. 5 men, 5 collaborators who, she claims, took more than they ever gave. Some names have shocked the industry. Some had been whispered about for years. But hearing them from Goldie herself, the woman no one expected to speak out, changed everything. She did not name them with the intention of destroying them. She named them to reclaim her identity. "I'm not doing this for the headlines," she said. "I'm doing it because I want the truth to outlive the illusion." Because Goldie Hawn wasn't simply wronged. She was erased, belittled, and expected to remain silent because it was easier to portray her as a ditzy blonde than a woman with boundaries. But she's not the same woman anymore. This is the real story behind the laughter, behind the perfect curls and toothy smile. This is Goldie Hawn, finally breaking her silence, not to settle old scores, but to say what should have been said decades ago. "They have hurt me, and I'm finished pretending they didn't." One, Chevy Chase. "He made me feel like a joke." They looked great together on screen. The dashing comic with razor-sharp timing and the radiant blonde who could light up a room with a single glance. Foul Play, 1978, was a box office success, a buddy comedy wrapped in mystery, and for many, a defining film of its time. Goldie Hawn and Chevy Chase star, and critics describe their performance as charming, effortless, and electric. What about behind the scenes? Goldie claims it was anything but. "We laughed a lot," she admitted, "but I cried more than people would ever guess." She recalls feeling hopeful when they first met. Chevy was a rising star, fresh from Saturday Night Live. By then, Goldie had won an Oscar and established herself as a leading lady. She envisioned an equal partnership, with 2 comedy minds colliding and elevating each other. She was wrong. According to Goldie, Chase set the tone from the first day on set. Not a collaboration, but a competition. "He had to be the funniest man in the room. Always," she told me, "even if it meant stepping on your cue to get there." At first, she tried to dismiss it. He was under stress, she reasoned. Comedy was stressful. But then the jokes began, and they were not on the script. "He used to call me Dizzy Blonde in between takes, not as a character, as a person, in front of the crew, in front of the directors. Everybody would laugh." Goldie, the consummate professional, smiled through it. However, the comments got out of hand. He'd mock her acting style, calling it adorable but not deep. During rehearsals, she claims he once interrupted a particularly emotional scene by impersonating her crying like a baby seal. "I do not think he intended to be cruel. I believe he intended to win," she reflected. "But sometimes men don't realize what they're doing when the punchline is always you." The tipping point occurred during a promotional appearance on a late-night show. Goldie had been nervous. Chevy had conducted dozens of interviews like this. She hoped he would support her. Instead, he took control. He started telling this supposedly funny story about how I had forgotten lines on set. He exaggerated everything. I said I had mixed up my cues and couldn't remember blocking if it was written on a post-it on my nose. I just sat there, humiliated. The host laughed. The audience laughed. And Goldie? She smiled, because that is what women like her were taught to do. I returned to my hotel room and cried, not because he made me embarrassed. However, I realized he did not see me as a partner, just a prop. Following foul play, Goldie and Chevy were expected to reunite. There were rumblings about a sequel. Producers were interested. Studios were circling. But Goldie declined every offer. I knew if I worked with him again, I'd disappear into his punchlines. Years have passed. She never spoke publicly about their relationship. Even when asked about their chemistry, she'd always smile politely and redirect the question. But now she says, it is time to stop protecting those who have never protected her. I don't hate him, but I don't forgive him either, she explained, because he made me feel like a joke. And I worked damn hard to be taken seriously. Chevy Chase has long been known for its difficulty. Former SNL co-workers have accused him of arrogance, temper, and inappropriate remarks. But Goldie's story goes deeper. It wasn't just about ego. It was a dismissal. It was the gradual deterioration of dignity wrapped in a laugh track. They haven't spoken for decades. No telephone calls, no apologies. When asked if she'd ever consider a reunion, Goldie didn't hesitate. Absolutely not. I am not angry. I'm tired of being the setup for someone else's punchline. Because even sunshine has limitations, Goldie Hawn is finally walking out of the joke. 2. Burt Reynolds. He wasn't just difficult, he was cruel. If Chevy Chase dismissed her with jokes, Burt Reynolds attempted to break her silence. Their 1980s film project was never intended to become legendary, a light romantic caper that would fill cinema seats on summer weekends. But what happened during production, Goldie claims, changed her perspective on fame and the men who weaponized it. I went into that film respecting him, said the actress. I left it questioning everything. At the time, Burt Reynolds was it. The mustache, the swagger, the smirk that made the news and women swoon. Goldie, the eternal optimist, believed they could be a perfect match. His charm, her sparkle. But as soon as she arrived on set, the atmosphere changed. He did not greet me, not even on the first day, just a nod. As if I were a stand-in. She assumed it was nerves, or ego, or maybe just concentrate. But as the days passed, it became clear that it was not about distraction. It was all about control. He didn't look at me during takes. He would deliver lines over my shoulder. He told the director that I was too smiley, which ruined the mood. When I asked for a line read, he rolled his eyes and said, "She needs acting school, not a caravan." Crew members caught on quickly. The mood shifted. Jokes were whispered in the corners. Goldie, who had built a career on being disarming, now felt like an intruder. I'd never felt so small on set before, not even when I was starting out. But it wasn't just the cold. It was a deliberate erasure. She remembered a pivotal scene, one she had fought to keep because it gave her character depth. Burt allegedly told producers after filming that it dragged and requested that it be cut. It was the only time my character didn't respond to him, and he despised that. He wanted each frame to be his. The scene did not make the final cut. Goldie's voice did not change either. They maintained a civil tone when dealing with the press, smiles during premieres. During press junkets, people share friendly stories. However, Goldie claims that the damage had already been done. I've been warned about him, that he was old school, that he disliked opinionated women. But I didn't expect him to go out of his way to make me feel disposable. The final straw occurred during an interview. A reporter asked Burt what it was like to work with Goldie Hawn. What was his answer? "She's fun, a little too bubbly for serious work, but enjoyable." Goldie remained still after reading the quote in her trailer. "I didn't ask for flattery. I asked to be seen." They never worked together again. Years later, during a retrospective of his career, Burt was asked about his biggest regrets. Goldie was not mentioned. "Of course not," she replied. "Men like that have no regrets about the women they silence. They forget them." She does not wish him ill. In fact, when he died in 2018, she shared a single rose emoji on social media. No caption, no tribute. "That was my piece," she explained. "This is not forgiveness. Just let it be." Because the worst wounds are not always caused by screams or scandals. They emerge from silence. And for Goldie Hawn, Burt Reynolds was more than just difficult. He was cruel in the most quiet, calculated manner. 3. Bill Murray. He crossed the line again and again. She had admired him for years. The genius of Ghostbusters, the brilliance of Groundhog Day, and the chaotic charm that elevated Bill Murray to legendary status. So when Goldie Hawn finally got the chance to collaborate with him on a small, offbeat indie comedy in the early 2000s, she thought she was in for something special. "I expected something quirky," she explained. "What I got was cruel." The film, which was never widely distributed, was conceived as a light-hearted, improvised dramedy about aging, fame, and identity. It should have been a dream. Goldie, who has always valued creative freedom, was excited by the messy nature of the process. Murray, she reasoned, would be the ideal scene partner, a kindred spirit. However, she claims that after a few days, the set began to feel more like a battlefield than a playground. He was late, constantly. She said, "It's hours late." And when he did show up, he made it clear that he didn't think I belonged there. Goldie recalls one rehearsal when she was adjusting to a new scene structure, which is the type of artistic pivot required for indie films. She asked a question about a character beat, hoping to connect the dots. Bill looked at me, loud enough for everyone to hear, and said, "You still don't get it, right?" Then he turned to the crew and added, "She's used to being cute, not clever." There was laughter, nervous, awkward laugh. Goldie didn't say anything at that moment. She powered through the day as she always did. But later, alone in her caravan, she had a breakdown. "That wasn't a joke," she replied. "That was humiliation with a smirk." She tried to talk to him about it, to clear the air, but when she approached him the next morning, he waved her away. "I'm just doing my thing," he explained. "Don't take it so personal." But Goldie took it personally, because it was personal. He mocked her in front of a team that already considered him a genius, and her the aging romantic lead. "That's the thing about men like Bill," she told me. "They pretend they're outsiders, but they're still clinging to the same power structures as everyone else." When the shoot was finished, she quietly left. The film never had a wide release. She never mentioned it, even when asked about her experience with comedy legends during interviews. "I kept his secrets," she explained, and he kept laughing. Years later, when she learned he was being investigated for other on-set behavior, she was not surprised. "He crosses lines," she explained, "again and again, and he hides behind the label of eccentric. But being brilliant does not excuse cruelty." "Will she ever work with him again?" "No," she replied. "That's funny. And there's meanness. I recognize the difference now." Goldie Hawn does not name names to settle disputes. She names them so that they can draw lines. And Bill Murray, for all his brilliance, crossed her path. 4. Steve Martin. He let me down when I needed support. This was the only name on her list that caused her to pause. Stephen Martin. Goldie Hawn and Steve Martin were comedic legends. Their chemistry was undeniable, on stage, on screen, and during interviews. From house sitter to red carpet events, they exude happiness, witty, wholesome, equal parts class clown and class act. They were more than just co-stars, they were also friends, or so she thought. "I always felt safe with Steve," she explained softly. "He was clever but not cruel, until he was..." The shift did not occur during a shoot or a scandal. It came at a time when Goldie was struggling professionally, emotionally, and creatively. In the early 2000s, her job opportunities were drying up. Studios preferred younger faces. Scripts bearing her name were being passed down to newer stars with fewer wrinkles and more buzz. "I was trying to stage a comeback," she admitted. "I wasn't looking for handouts, just a hand." Goldie had a project, a short script that is female-led, smart, and poignant. She reached out to Steve, not to start, just to read it, offer your thoughts, maybe introduce her to a producer or two. He said he would take a look. He never replied. Weeks have passed, then months. Then came the biggest blow, a leaked email shared among producers in which Steve allegedly described her film as sentimental fluff, and another attempt by Goldie to find what Hollywood has already moved on from. She read the email 3 times before believing it was genuine. "I wasn't angry," she explained. "I was heartbroken. Being dismissed by strangers was one thing, but being dismissed by Steve, who once held her hand on set during a panic attack and referred to her as the most underrated comic in the business, felt like betrayal. He didn't simply ignore me. He joined the crowd laughing behind my back." Goldie confronted him once, years later, at an event. She asked about the email. She describes his response as a shrug and a half-hearted, "I don't even remember writing that, but I remember," she replied. "Every word. They have not spoken since. She still honors his legacy. She still smiles politely when his name is mentioned. But the warmth is gone. What about the partnership? Over. Support isn't about applause when you're winning, she told the crowd. It's about showing up when you're slipping. Steve did not show up, and Goldie Hawn, who helped define a generation of comedians, was left to rise on her own. 5. The one that hurt the most. Kurt Russell. Nobody saw this name coming. Not the media, not the fans, and not even those closest to her. Because when Goldie Hawn finally said it aloud, there was silence. Kurt, they've been one of Hollywood's most enduring love stories for more than 4 decades. No scandals, no divorces, just laughter, loyalty, and the unmistakable spark that convinced millions of people that soulmates exist. But Goldie's voice trembled slightly as she approached the 5th and final name. He's the love of my life, she explained. But that doesn't mean he didn't break my heart. The incident she's referring to did not occur in the tabloids or on the red carpet. It happened quietly, during a time when their relationship was on the verge of collapse. This was in the early 2000s. I was fading in Hollywood's eyes. Kurt was still working, magnetic and in demand, and I was drifting. It didn't hurt that he was successful. He didn't realize she wasn't there. I remember watching him leave for the set, excited, and I'd be sitting at home wondering if my phone would ring. It did not. She didn't expect him to fix things, but she expected him to see her. Instead, she claims he pulled away. There was a coolness. He would never admit it, but I believe he felt embarrassed for me, as if I had become a has-been in his orbit. She recalls one night after a tense dinner, discussing a script she had been working on, a passion project about women over 60 discovering themselves. She asked him to read it. He sighed and said, "Goldie, maybe it's time to let that part of your career go." That night, she slept in the guest room. They did not split. They did not scream. But the distance grew as moss, quiet, creeping, suffocating. People believe that love protects you from hurt, but the deepest wounds come from those who know where your weak points are. It took years, literally years, to mend what had broken between them. She credits therapy, patience, and eventually a genuine apology. He said he was scared. "I was afraid of becoming resentful towards him. I was afraid I was going to disappear. I was scared I'd stop being the Goldie he fell for." How did she respond? "I already had." They made it through, and they are still together today, stronger but changed. I adore him more than anyone I have ever known, but I never completely forgiven that chapter. It is not bitter, it is a memory. And when Goldie Hawn says she'll never forgive 5 co-stars, she doesn't mean it with malice. She says it clearly, because even great love has its dark times. Even in fairy tales, there are some pages you will never want to read again. Would you like me to continue with section 6? The internet reacts. A nation rethinks its icons. It did not take long. The internet exploded within hours of Goldie Hawn's revelations becoming public. Hashtags such as #GoldieSpeaks, #BelieveGoldie, and #TheyWereMonsters started trending on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. What started as a quiet interview turned into a cultural storm. Fans were divided, not in their support for Goldie, but in their surprise at the names. Chevy Chase? Believable. Bill Murray? Confirmed suspicions. But Steve Martin? Kurt Russell? These were the curveballs. One TikTok creator's tearful reaction to Goldie's comments about Kurt Russell quickly surpassed 10 million views. "I thought they were the perfect couple," she reflects. But maybe perfect just means silent pain. Dozens of creators collaborated on the video, sharing their own stories about public couples who later revealed private heartbreaks. Meanwhile, Twitter became a battleground. Some have defended the legends. Steve Martin would never. Bill Murray is just quirky, not cruel. Kurt and Goldie are untouchable. Others pushed back with force. Stop idolizing men just because they were charming on camera. Goldie Hawn remained silent for 40 years. That is not gossip, that is survival. Then came the thinking pieces. Major publications ran headlines such as "Goldie Hawn's 5 names shatter the Comedy Boys Club," "Rewriting nostalgia," "What happens when icons are not innocent." She wasn't just the girl who laughed, she was the woman who endured. Even celebrities have quietly weighed in. Amy Schumer wrote, "Goldie paved the way for all of us. She is now setting fire to the road behind her. Respect." Reese Witherspoon shared a single word: listening. The silence of the men named was deafening. no statements, no tweets. There are no press releases, not even publicists. But what about Goldie? That silence represented freedom. Because for the first time, the narrative was not theirs. It belonged to her. And millions of fans, particularly women, discovered the truth behind the laughter. She was not the ditzy blonde. She was not the second banana. She was not the joke. She was a survivor. Goldie Hawn did not step forward to settle old scores. She did not name names in order to go viral. She wasn't looking for pity or redemption. She was looking for peace. For years, she let her laughter propel her. Through misogyny, dismissal, and decades of being the punchline of someone else's joke, she wore her optimism as armor. She smiled as men spoke over her. She danced as they ignored her. She laughed so hard that no one realized how much she had been silenced. But now she can smile again. "I don't want revenge," she said quietly. "I want release." This is not a bitter legacy. It is a legacy of boundaries. A woman who finally revealed the true cost of remaining sweet, sunny, and silent for half a century. A woman who forgave the public but never forgot her personal wounds. She is not erasing the past. She is reclaiming it. Chevy transformed her into a prop. Burt made her feel smaller. Bill mocked her. Steve abandoned her. Kurt, the man she loved, left her alone in the dark when she needed him the most. She's still here, not broken, not angry, just awoke. She is not seeking apologies from the men she named, and she doesn't mind if they offer them, because Goldie Hawn has already accomplished the most difficult feat for a woman in Hollywood. She has aged without losing her identity. She is no longer willing to smile for the sake of others' comfort. The industry may remember her for the laugh, the legs, or the light. What about Goldie? She'll remember how she overcame the silence and finally spoke up. She doesn't require a role. She doesn't need a man. She does not need permission. She shared her story, and this time, only she is editing it.